Frank Zappa.
Frank Zappa heavily. All my 7/4 and 5/4,
Yeah.
learning odd time signatures, and he was the king of that. So I learned a lot. I can, from memory, sing you, his whole first 10 records. Me and Steve Vai on the tour bus on the first Dave tour. We could sing every Frank Zappa song there was with every little nuance. It was funny. So we learned a lot of that, and it's about everything. Anything in music is an influence.
Including things like Bach even, right?
Yeah, well, Bach I get into real heavily very, very early on, way early 70s, and everybody's like, it's a buzzword now. I listen to classical music, and I said, I'd much rather go listen to something that no one else is listening to, like pedal steel guitar or ethnic music, something that not everybody's into, because I've always, as a player, I've always tried to go towards something different than what everyone else was doing, and it's been successful for me so far, so I continue that. Instead of going with how everyone else is being influenced, go somewhere else,
What have you done over the years to make your bass unique?
Well, with my Fender bass, this is basically an imitation of the Fender. The Fender's so beat over the years. Here, I'll show you here. This Fender is so beat, I'm always worried about it not making it to the next gig sometimes, because it's just been through. This is this is the only finish left on the poor thing, And as far as what I've done to it over the years, I've just played so long, so many times, so many hot, sweaty nights, that the bass kind of wears into you. So now when I get a new bass, like the Yamaha, I have to mimic all the wear on the new bass. So on this here, remember I was talking about the position for your thumb?
Yes.
That's natural wear into the pickguard. It's a multi-layered Fender pickguard,
Right.
so that's all natural wear. If you can see, there's wear spots here, all along here. It's all wear from where my thumb goes all along, So I've like worn this thing into, worn it out practically, So it's, and I get used to an instrument. It's a good idea for players when you're starting out to pick an instrument and stick with it, because you'll find your body starts to shape out. Right now, if I stand up, my ribs go in on this side from this bass being up against me. My shoulder goes down on the left from holding it, so my body's permanently crippled from holding on to 30 pounds of Fender bass for so long, whatever. But so you really fit into it. It becomes such a natural part of you after a while. So to change basses, get a new bass is very tough to do. So anything I do to the instrument, I try to mimic on my new instruments what happened naturally to my Fender after years and years and years of playing. So I knew that was going to happen. And so now on this bass, basically, I've used this for all the recording I've done recently, and I've used it a little bit live. But it's so hard to get used to anything different than the Fender.
Right.
So what I've done with this bass to get it more closer to what I like, I've actually worn down here with a little moto tool. I faked the actual wear there, so it feels the same. And basically I had to take like 600 grit sandpaper and just take all the shine off, because if it's too shiny, it's too slippery.
Right.
But that bass is like bare wood, so it just sticks on my body. I've had to like put this tape and stuff on there to make it
Traction.
feel. Yeah, give it to, like, the stuff you put on your bathtub so you don't slip and things like that, And just wear it down and make it feel worn in.
You scalp the fretboard and things like that too, don't you?
Yeah, I started to scalp this one, but I was on my way to Japan under the auspices of Yamaha, and I didn't want to beat their beautiful bass. They were kind enough to give me too bad, so I ended up not doing my homespun scalloping job that I did annihilate my Fender with. So that's I will do it though. The purpose of that is when you do that high bends,
you get a little more bend.
You get a little of that wood out of the way there, and it tends to, when your hands are hot and sweaty or whatever, you tend to catch up on that wood a little bit. So so that's what that's for. But basically, I just wear the thing down.
What about your D-tuner?
Yeah, this Hipshot D-tuner, great little deal. For years, I used to tune down to low D live, and I'd have to tune in between while the singer's trying to say something, or something, in the dead air there while people are streaming out of the bar, But I saw an ad for this in one of the guitar magazines, and it's like, you know, came, fell from the heavens. Perfect, exactly what I needed. So it's a real simple device. It just takes your tuning key and mounts it on a little thing that you can just, you flip it. It just moves the whole thing down, so you don't change the tuning at all. Stays right in. Drop it down to low D, back to an E. Works, you know, perfect right in tune. Back up to the E. So it works great. If you got to make sure and pull the string really super tightly, that's when I put my strings on. I always torque them down on that tuning key with all my strength, pulling each one as hard as I can, so that as you're playing and bending strings, you're not going to pull yourself out of tune. I see guys playing a lot and bending strings, and halfway through the night, the bass is hopelessly out of tune. So I always keep it torqued as heavy as I can. When I put a new set of strings on, I tune them up extra sharp, let them sit for a while, then tune them back down and squeeze them and pull them as hard as possible before they break, you know, to make sure they're all worked in good, so when I go up on stage and play, I almost never have a tuning problem. You know, I almost never break a string. I haven't broken a string for probably about 6 or 7 years now. Actually, used properly, they won't break, you know.
This is a special set of strings for you, too, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they're going to actually make some kind of Billy Sheehan deal set or something, I don't know, but this is my suggestion, and they seem excited about it, so I think they're going to actually package it up. It's basically a standard set of rotosound strings, but the G is a little bit lighter, and the E is a little bit heavier. It evens the tension out. It gives you a nice big, fatter, heavier low end, which all bass players could probably use. And if you tune down to a low D, because the E string is a little bit heavier, the tension stays there. It doesn't flop around as much. And again, on the G, you tend to, it makes it a little easier to bend. And since the G is usually way tighter than the other strings on a bass, this evens out the tension a little bit more. So it really makes it even across the neck. Really helps your right hand technique out. It does for me. So hopefully they'll put it together and, you know, do a package a set of strings like that, you know.
What about your pickups and actual electronics in the guitar?
All passive. I don't use any active stuff, because every time you got an active thing, you're always wondering, is it the battery?
Yeah.
You know, it's something, you know, that...
Fused variables.
Yeah, exactly, because you never know. It's distorting a little bit. It doesn't sound quite like it did last night. Maybe it's the battery, you know. It's always, because you never know.
And you become
somehow they put a brand new
junkie.
battery in, but for some reason it lost, you know, you never know. So it's that one mystery that I hate having. So it's always passive electronics. DiMarzio pickups, I've used DiMarzios for years. It's just loud, good sounding, fat, honking pickup, straight to a volume control out. My bass has two outputs, as you see. One is for the DiMarzio output, and the other one is for the, I use either a DiMarzio Model 1 or an old Gibson EBO humbucker, big fat, super low end bass. So I run 2 amps, one clean, or one super deep low end and one high end, so I can mix between high and low on the bass. That's making an awfully long story short, but it's, trust me, it basically, remember the old Rickenbacker basses had a stereo jack, Ricco sound. Yeah, that's the same principle. But back in, I think it was 1971, I actually put my first humbucker on there, so it's been around for a long time. So it actually works out, because the humbucker, low end pickup is the best super deep low end, and the Fender style DiMarzio here in this case is covers everything else. You have the best of both worlds on that. And
you also have a nice place to rest your thumb.
Yeah, it's a good thumb rest thing. Oh, it's a good point.
What words of wisdom could you give to aspiring bass players who want to be known as bass players for the 90s? What could you tell them?
Find a live, real human being drummer and sit down and work with them and work out songs. And I know it's tough these days to play out clubs, because there aren't as many clubs there were when I was coming up. But if you play live everywhere and anywhere, I played bank openings, football practices for the Buffalo Bills. Never any grocery stores, fortunately. Fashion shows, millions of proms. You know, proms, you had like 2 slow songs. When you got those out of there, the rest of the night everybody's like sweating, throwing their tuxedos aside, you know, going nuts. So we played everything, you know, and just a great experience to learn things.